The New York City tenant who allegedly owes thousands to a landlord and pushed her into homelessness says that she's not a deadbeat tenant. Well, I don't know if that's the truth or not. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's an update to a story that I previously did that was talking about how a New York City landlord was pushed into homelessness by a tenant. This article comes from the New York Post, and it says, NYC tenant who allegedly owes thousands to landlord says she's no deadbeat. In the previous video that I did, I went over this whole crazy story about how this landlord who was struggling due to the eviction moratorium was forced to live in her car due to this tenant who hasn't paid rent and refuses to leave. And this is a kind of story that is the worst case scenario that a lot of us landlords are seeing right now during this whole eviction moratorium thing. But let's get into this article. A Brooklyn tenant who was accused of forcing her landlord to live in her car by milking emergency COVID-19 rent rules insisted she is no deadbeat. I know I owe her something. I'm willing to pay her, Sharita Patterson, 33, told the Post on Wednesday. Shauna Eccles, 30, the landlord of the humble Brooklyn home where Patterson lives, claims Patterson hasn't paid her $20,000 in combined back rent and interest, and that she has had to live in her car. I mean, how far does a person have to go before they realize that, hey, maybe these landlords do need help? Maybe this kind of thing shouldn't be happening at all. Okay, there shouldn't be any tenant who owes $20,000. I mean, there's no way that anyone's going to be able to pay this kind of money back. Patterson, however, says that any money trouble between the pair is just a big misunderstanding. This is her place. It's not like I want to live there for free, but she is not communicating with me, Patterson said. Patterson also shot down Eccles' claim of homelessness. She is not homeless. She still lives in the house, Patterson said of Eccles. She uses the back entrance, and her other family members use the front door. The same door that I use. Okay, well, I don't know if that's true or not, okay? I mean, what kind of landlord would be even making up this sort of story in the first place? I mean, if there's a $20,000 debt owed, I'm sure that there's some sort of record of that. And of course, the tenant's going to say whatever it takes to, try to garner sympathy, especially after that first article came out. I mean, nobody wants to look like a complete moron, by saying that my landlord is forced to live in their car while I'm living here rent free. So, she's going to come out here and she's going to tell whatever it takes to try to, garner that little bit of sympathy. But I'm going to throw up a picture on the screen of what the rental property looks like. And it looks like, basic little duplex, what you see typical in that area of New York. But yeah, I'm not believing what this tenant is saying right now. Patterson, a single mother of three, moved into the $2,100 per month 2-bedroom apartment at Eccles' 2-story East 91st Street building in Canarsie on August 1st, 2019. The tenant says the City Department of Social Services paid her rent for a year. Well, there is a problem right there. I mean, she was on Section 8 for a full year. And, she hasn't paid anything since then, it looks like. So if she moved in August of 2019, that means since August of 2020, there has been absolutely no rent paid towards, to the landlord. Goodness. In mid-May last year, Eccles sent Patterson a notice telling her that her lease would not be renewed when it expired on July 31st. Ever since, Eccles has been trying and failing to evict Patterson, who has filled out a state hardship declaration form claiming she has been financially impacted by COVID-19 crisis and is unable to move. Patterson has until at least May 1st before any New York housing court would consider a case against her thanks to the state's pandemic-inspired eviction moratorium and recently enacted housing regulations. Yeah, these eviction moratoriums have prevented landlords from getting rid of these bad tenants. So this tenant who was on Section 8, they can't, they're not paying anything right now. I don't even understand how a tenant is facing financial hardship when they were on Section 8 before. I mean, what's the deal? I mean, it doesn't make much sense. If I offered to pay, how am I considered a deadbeat tenant, Patterson asked. It's apparent Eccles just wants her property back. It's not about the money. Patterson explained after the lease was up, she did not communicate with me at all. She would just say, speak to my lawyer. That's actually the appropriate course of action. Instead of trying to negotiate or trying to, work out a deal, she's just like, hey, talk to my lawyer. My lawyer will tell you everything that you need to know, and you and I, we don't need to be saying anything at all. This is a legal matter. I want you out of my property, and you owe me money, and there's not going to be any sort of negotiation. I think what she is doing is evil, added Patterson, who says she worked as an officer with the Administration for Children's Services for a year before she resigned in March 2020. So she resigned from her own job. She put herself into poverty. She didn't lose her job. She wasn't forced into a bad financial situation. She resigned in March 2020. She said it herself right here that she resigned. Okay? You quitting your job is not, a reason for you not to be evicted. Oh, I just didn't want to work there anymore. It was too much work for me. Oh, give me a break, okay? This landlord's living in her car and you decided to quit your job? Oh, goodness. Patterson claims she got another city job in law enforcement, but the hiring was put on pause due to the coronavirus pandemic. I'm receiving pandemic unemployment benefits. I would give Eccles whatever I can, said Patterson. I'm unable to move. How can I move with pandemic unemployment? You owe $20,000 plus in back rent, and it just seems like you're just making excuses at this point. You can't be evicted. You don't have to pay anything, and you know that the landlord is homeless, and you're doing nothing. So who's the bad guy here? And it looks like it's you. Eccles says she thought she was close to a legal settlement with Patterson in December, and believing Patterson was about to vacate, she rented the home's first floor to an elderly woman and moved out temporarily to live with friends. Eccles also has claimed in court papers that Patterson bought a new car during the pandemic, a charge Patterson declares is also false. I did not buy a new car. It's a 2017 Chevy Malibu. I borrowed it in March 2020, a week before the shutdown, and I wasn't even responsible for paying my rent at that time. My rent was paid up until July, Patterson said. So, when some people say new car, when I say new car, oh, hey, I bought a new car, that doesn't mean it was brand new. You bought a car, and looking at what you just said earlier, you quit your job. So, the month that you quit your job, you bought a car, and you were on Section 8 at the time, where you had rental assistance. I mean, none of this is adding up. It all adds up to a person who is not financially responsible, who doesn't care if other people are paying all her bills, if the government is paying all her bills, and you just sound like an awful tenant. You sound like you're a horrible tenant, in fact. I mean, oh man, this is completely ridiculous. I mean, I can't even imagine what this landlord is going through right now. So, if they are allowed to sleep on a family member's sofa every once in a while, they're fortunate, but God. Patterson described the entire situation as more than a nightmare. After Eccles got $28,000 from DSS for the whole year, she tried to bully me to move so that she could move her family in, Patterson claimed. She wanted that lump sum of money. Oh my God, she wanted all of her money back at one time? She didn't want, to be on a payment plan with her tenant? I don't think this is even half of the truth, okay? I'm done with this. I mean, this tenant, she would just drive me crazy. And this is part of the reason I don't even take a lot of tenants who, are on Section 8. They're just not good tenants.